They erased everyone who knew, not loudly, not with fire or screams, just quietly, one by one. Names stopped being spoken. Memories stopped being confirmed. Truth stopped having witnesses, people. And I was still breathing inside a room that suddenly felt too empty for my own echo. I didn't realize at first what was happening. I just felt it. That strange cold when you speak and no one looks back. When you explain yourself and the room stays unmoved. When your voice sounds normal to you, but dangerous to everyone else. I learned early that words could get you erased. So I learned silence. Silence became my language, my shield, my sentence. I watched people I trusted drift away without conflict, without goodbye. As if knowing me had become a liability, as if association itself was a risk. And I asked myself a question that kept me awake longer than fear ever could. What did they see in me that made them step back? I tried to fix it. I tried to soften my edges. I tried to explain my intentions before anyone accused me of having the wrong ones. People. I tried smiling at the wrong moments just to look harmless. It didn't work. The more I tried to be understood, the more invisible I became. The more I reached out, the more distance grew, and eventually I stopped reaching. That's the thing nobody tells you about isolation. It doesn't arrive screaming. It arrives whispering. It convinces you that maybe this is safer. Maybe being alone hurts less than being misunderstood. So I stayed quiet. Days turned into routines. Routines turned into habits. These civilized people. Habits turned into a life that looked functional from the outside and hollow from the inside. I was present, but not included. Alive, not living, known by name, but not by truth. And the worst part wasn't the loneliness. It was the doubt. Because when enough people walk away, you start interrogating yourself like an enemy. You replay conversations at night. You rewrite moments in your head. You wonder if your existence itself carries a warning label. I asked myself things I was afraid to answer. Am I too much? Am I not enough? Am I broken in a way I can't see? These civilized people. There were nights when the noise inside my head was louder than any crowd. Nights when the silence felt heavy, like it was pressing down on my chest, daring me to say something, anything, just to prove I was still here. But who do you speak to when everyone who knew you has been erased? I carried my chaos alone. My anger had nowhere to land. My confusion had no mirror. My fear had no witness. I failed quietly. Not the dramatic kind of failure people clap for later. The invisible kind. The kind that looks like trying every day and still feeling behind. The kind that makes you question whether effort even matters. I watched others move forward, while I felt stuck in the same mental room, pacing the same thoughts, asking the same unanswered questions, and deep down, a terrifying realization began to form. If they erased everyone who knew, what happens when they notice me? Because erasure doesn't stop with the witnesses. It always comes from the source. I felt it in the way eyes lingered a second too long, in the way conversations stopped when I entered, in the way my silence was no longer invisible, but suspicious. I wasn't loud, I wasn't reckless, I wasn't violent or cruel. I was different, and that was enough. So I shrank. I made myself smaller to survive. I folded parts of my personality into corners of my mind and locked them there. I learned how to disappear while still showing up. And the cost of that survival was slow and brutal. Because when you erase yourself long enough, you start forgetting who you were before the erasing began. I stood at mirrors and felt nothing. No pride, no hatred, just distance. I existed in between versions of myself. The one I used to be, and the one I didn't know how to become. I kept asking for signs, some confirmation that this pain meant something, that this confusion wasn't random, that this isolation had a purpose beyond punishment. Nothing answered. These civilized people, more nights, more unanswered thoughts. And still, something inside me refused to die. Not hope. Hope felt too bright for where I was. It was something darker, something stubborn, a tension, a pressure, like standing on the edge of a cliff, unsure whether you're about to jump or finally learn how to fly. I didn't feel healed. I didn't feel strong. I felt exposed. Like the world had stripped me down to the core and was waiting to see what I'd do without an audience. And that's where I stopped running, not because I found clarity, but because I ran out of places to hide. I stood there, surrounded by silence, surrounded by absence, surrounded by the quiet evidence of everything I had lost. And I realized something terrifying. They weren't just erasing everyone who knew. They were making room, and I was standing at the edge of whatever came next. Still unsure, still unhealed, still searching, but no longer asleep. I stayed there longer than I want to admit. At that edge, people between who I was and who I might become, not moving forward, not stepping back, just listening. For the first time in my life, there's no one left to impress, no one left to convince, no one left to misunderstand me. And in that silence, something strange happened. I heard myself, not the voice shaped by fear, not the version edited for acceptance, the real one. The one that had been buried under years of adjustment and apology. It didn't scream. It didn't beg. It asked one question. What if this wasn't rejection? What if this was removal? That thought didn't comfort me. It challenged me. Because if everything had been stripped away, then what remained was mine to build. I stopped asking why they left. I stopped replaying old moments like they still had power over me. I stopped negotiating with a past that was never going to explain itself. And slowly, painfully, I accepted a truth that changed everything. No one was coming to validate me. People. No one was coming to rescue me from confusion. No one was coming to tell my story correctly. People, so I would have to become someone who didn't need permission to exist. The shift wasn't dramatic. There was no explosion of confidence, just discipline. Quiet, uncelebrated discipline. I started choosing silence on purpose, not as fear, as focus. I learned that silence, when chosen, is power. It lets others reveal themselves while you remain undefined. It protects your energy. It sharpens your thinking. I stopped explaining myself to people committed to misunderstanding me. I stopped shrinking to fit into spaces that were never designed for my depth. And for the first time, being alone didn't feel like abandonment. It felt like preparation. Pain stopped being an enemy. It became a teacher with no interest in my comfort. Every scar carried a lesson. Every loss carried information. I learned who disappears when you stop chasing. I learned who only values you when you're convenient. I learned how strong I could become when survival was no longer my goal and growth was. I built myself quietly, no announcements, no validation posts, no applause, just work, just consistency, just showing up for myself when no one else did. And something dangerous happened. I started trusting myself. Not blindly, earned trust, built through kept promises, through discipline on days motivation never showed up. The world didn't suddenly become kind, but they'd stopped controlling me. Because when you know who you are, erasure loses its threat. People, I understood then why they erased everyone who knew. Because witnesses carry leverage, memories carry chains, and they didn't want me anchored to who I used to be. They were coming for me, yes, but not to destroy me, to test me, to see if I'd crumble without an audience. These civilized people, to see if my identity depended on recognition, to see if I could stand alone and still move forward. And I did. Not loudly, not recklessly. Relentlessly, I stopped asking for space. I took it. I stopped asking to be seen. I became undeniable. I stopped fearing judgment. Because judgment requires access, and I revoked it. Every day I chose discipline over comfort, clarity over chaos, direction over distraction, and slowly, people noticed again. But this time, it didn't matter, because I wasn't building for them. I was building for the version of me who survived when everything familiar disappeared. Now when silence surrounds me, it doesn't scare me. It reminds me of where I was forged. Now when they come, I don't hide, I stand. Not aggressive, not defensive, grounded. Because I know something now they don't want you to realize. If they erased everyone who knew, it's because the next version of you doesn't need witnesses. It needs courage. It needs discipline. It needs action. So if you're listening to this and you feel hunted, good. That means you're no longer invisible. That means you've outgrown the old room. That means something powerful is trying to emerge. Don't run back to comfort. Don't explain yourself. Don't beg for understanding. Build in silence. Move with intention. Become so solid in who you are that erasure becomes impossible. They're coming for you. So make sure when they arrive, they meet someone who cannot be erased.